Friends, this is cleanup time, and we're discounting all our silent electric Ubiks by this much money. Yes, we're throwing away the Blue Book. And remember, every Ubik on our lot has been used only as directed. The best way to ask for beer is to sing out Ubik. Made from select hops, choice water, slow age for perfect flavor, Ubik is the nation's #1 choice in beer. Made only in Cleveland. Instant Ubik has all the fresh flavor of just brewed drip coffee. Your husband will say, "Christ, Sally, I used to think your coffee was only so-so, but now, wow!" Safe when taken as directed.
You know, he's really, he's shameless in intellectual argument. He's absolutely without character, a moral foundation, or even intellectual substance.
Okay, welcome back to Getting Lit. Last episode, we talked about Jesus Christ Superstar and the Prince of Egypt and Bible stories. And this episode, we're going to be talking about Philip K. Dick. And I have a very special guest joining us today. It is Ryan Simón. I always, because of your accent over the O, I always want to pronounce it like, Raven Simone, like Raven Simone.
Yeah.
I want to say Ryan Simone. So Ryan is the editor of the fantastic magazine called American Vulgaria, but also a popular straight guy guest on a lot of incredibly gay podcasts.
Yeah.
Like the Third Place and TPN. So you're adding another one to your list today. So welcome, Ryan.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Thank you for having me on.
Okay,
I like being the token straight guy of the podcast scene.
You know what? I was going to say token, but I was like, oh, is that a bit insulting? I don't want to say that.
No. It's who I think, the artist Zach Brown on the Night of the Living Dead episode of TPN more or less drunkenly announced that we're in the era of like the pick me straights.
Yes.
So totally fair.
Yeah. So pick me straights. I love that. That's such a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to be talking about Philip K. Dick today, which I've been looking forward to. It seems like we've been talking about this for like years, but it's been a couple of months, I think. But before we do that, I just wanted to sort of talk about your magazine, which is amazing. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So American Vulgaria, great title too. I fucking love that title.
Oh man.
I absolutely love this sort of arty sleaze vibe you've got going on. There's sort of like this sort of studied erotic rawness to it, which, maybe that sounds paradoxical, but you kind of leaf through these pages and the content's really engrossing, but it's also the way you put it all together. It's like really thoughtful, but also lurid, but also sumptuous, but also simple. And I just think we kind of need more magazines in the world, and more of them need to be these kind of beautiful art objects that are just exhilarating to hold in your hands. So yeah, good work on that. Congratulations.
Thank you. So that's also wonderful to hear. Arty sleaze. I might throw that in issue too.
Arty sleaze sounds like some kind of porn alias or something. He's Jewish. I'm Arty sleaze.
Yeah, that's right. This is Jewish media.
So
that's kind of organically just the tone. I don't know. That's who I am.
An Arty sleaze bag.
I'm an Arty sleaze bag for sure.
Okay, so can you tell us about how it all came about? Like, how did you do this?
I mean, I'm trying to remember what I've already said. Okay, so American Vulgaria. I mean, I've started this, started the business in like 2017, shortly after, essentially like the big Trump moment. What's funny too is like right before then I was kind of fucking around like on medium.com and stuff, writing under the pseudonym Tippy Jackson from Ubik.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Synchronicities.
Yeah, that was funny too, because I thought I just like pulled that name out of my ass, and then I forgot that I read it in Ubik around that time. But around like, okay, I graduated college in 14 with an English degree in public health, but had the ambition of being a writer. Just kind of saw the current state of media and
Pause.
Yeah,
English and public health.
Yeah, dude. Okay, well, I went in going to study chemistry because I love the hard sciences. But the idea of just doing 4 years of just straight chemistry sounded like a nightmare. And I'm a academic. But public health, I just kind of gravitated towards because it's a way to do a 4-year undergrad, just doing like the intro to like all the sciences without delving too deep in anything. So it's a bit of a cop out. And then I just more and more gravitated towards English just because I enjoyed reading and writing. It was at Santa Clara, which is like a Jesuit school. So a lot of the Jesuits taught in the English department. So you get to hear from like these old heads, about like Joyce or whatever. So I mean, that was fun. But I had the ambition of like being a writer almost in initially thinking of like journalism, back when that had the illusion of being like a dignified career path. But that, for anyone paying attention, like totally blew up, especially with like the 2016. And so I kind of just figured like I want to start something, my own publication, whatever it is. And I floundered around for a bit until this issue, and decided, fuck it, I'll just go print and see what happens. The podcast scene especially kind of showed me the way, starting with like Red Scare, Perfume Nationalist, and like Adam Lair's work. I mean, really it was okay. It was reading Camille Paglia, Sexual Personae, and that just like, you read something like that and you have all of like your kind of dirty instincts that you don't want to voice, and then you have someone voice it so eloquently and just truthfully and honestly, and in a funny, charming way. So it's like, okay, this can be done.
It does. The vibe of it really is Parlian. Like, you should send an issue to her. Like,
oh my god,
find out her office. Where does she work? In like Philadelphia or somewhere?
Yeah.
Like send it to her. She'd love it.
I think she's like famously hard to get a hold of, and it sounds like she's writing a book, so she's like really kind of being reclusive with her contact. But
I guess she's writing that book on like Native Americans.
Yeah,
which she's been writing for 20 years.
That's so funny. Yeah, she's a huge inspiration. Whatever could be said in this, I mean, everyone knows Paglia, and talking about like Arty, sleaze, like she has a good sense of that, and like pornography is an art and art is pornography, and this sort of like Freudian underbelly of all creativity. She just lays it all bare. And so the Red Scare girls are the first that I came across that were pro pag. That would meet the Jack.
Paggetry.
Exactly. I mean, I tried just doing this strictly online, and just the digital space just doesn't feel real or satisfying or fulfilling in a way, the way that print does. And so, I started basically decided to use the American Bulgaria brand, if we want to call it that the project, and move it towards print, just see where it goes from there. And it's a fun excuse to kind of just meet the people that you're kind of admiring parasocially through podcasting, whatever, an excuse to make those connections. So really, I knew I'd get some interesting interviews of these people, but it was more of like a opportunity for me to kind of put all my aesthetic interests into this package, and explore that and see where that goes. And it's been really fun, and just that people even like this thing, because I had no idea what I was doing or how I'd be received. I have my aesthetic interest, like for like Days magazine of like late 90s, I love, and I ripped off a lot of like their design doing this. So I was worried, that people were like, oh, this is fucking this guy this guy's just copying, Days or Playboy or whatever the fuck. But yeah, it's just decided to do something. I also, having a kid on the way, it's kind of like that Eraserhead moment where it's like fatherhood is like the death of me, so it was kind of like racing the time, I had to get something out or, fulfill that dream just so I feel like I've a fulfilled man, before fatherhood,
It's amazing how like those milestones in your life and stuff like get you motivated. Like, all right, you're on the clock now. You got to fucking produce something. And then you realize when you do it, like obviously it's a lot of work and everything like that, and no matter what the project is, but you kind of just realize, oh, like I could have done this like way earlier, and like,
exactly.
but then also you probably couldn't, like you had to live that life in order to.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Like I always wish I did this sooner, but it's like, no, like the stars had to align a certain way for it to work, the way it did. And it just is what it is.
Yeah.
So now, I mean, it's fun. A lot of the anxiety and like insecurity around that when it's issue 1 is like, it's not there too. So I feel much more bold and confident going forward and to really like wild out and get funky with it.
So now that you've done the first one, we're like, oh shit, this is easy now. Or is it?
It's very
more
cheap.
Like different problems come up.
Yeah, like, well, I create different problems by, like we're saying, like I overpromise certain things I'm gonna do with issue 2 that I don't know how to do yet. Designing some of the guest interviewees in like PS2, PS1 rendered CGI models or whatever, which is fun. But I mean, it's when I think of the magazine too, it's more of a visual object. Like it's an art object. It's nice that people get so much out of the content itself, like the interviews, which is really credit to the people I'm interviewing. Like they're just naturally interesting and have quite a bit to say. And I mean, it's frustrating with a lot of magazines, the way they editorialize and edit and chop, that, whatever. I don't have any of that in there. My editorialization is just the sort of erotic texture to the whole thing. And, I'll slap some titties on some people's features if they like it or not,
Yeah. So I like that you said the attention to the visual. Like, I think that's something that's missing from a lot of magazines nowadays, because I think a lot of them, I guess, have their online version and then they've got the kind of physical version or whatever, and there's that distinction between them. But if you've just got a physical version, like you can think more, I don't know, it seems like you can think more aesthetically, not just about how it looks, but how it feels, to turn the page. And
absolutely, it's a very visual and tactile experience flipping through a magazine, and that's something that really frustrates
me. Return with a V.
Yeah, exactly. Like a lot, I'm writing an essay for another zine, the Cracks and Pomo guy, and I'm kind of assess. I've been hearing that we're in this sort of like print magazine renaissance, and maybe American Bulgaria is a part of that, but I'm assessing whether or not that's true. So I take issue with a lot of these new magazines. Like the poetry world's the worst at it, where it's just text on a page, and no very minimal design or anything. And it to me, like the design, the aesthetics, that's the justification for the print. Because like otherwise, just throw it out,
just put it online.
Just throw it online. Yeah. Like why? How can you expect people to pay for that? Because you're getting that exact content for free. Whereas if you put in the aesthetic work or whatever you want to call it, then this is something that you could only you know, you're getting something for your money's worth, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and it's really funny because it's like reading that first issue, like, you know, a couple of the interviewees, you know, I kind of know in the sense that we follow each other on social media, if you consider that knowing. So like the interview with Eric, for example, or Gold Pony as he's known, was really funny because it's like, oh yeah, I've sort of heard this before when he does his rants in the car.
Yeah.
But it's also like the way it's presented is really interesting. Like, so it's like, it's not just about the message or the thoughts or whatever. It's also about the, you know, it's about the visuals, the font, all this sort of shit that like people don't think about now because online is just all particular spaces in online, just all like walls of text.
Right.
But it's just more fun and kind of intriguing and fascinating to read that in that format, you know.
That's cool. Well, it's funny because in the moment, thinking of like that one, like I love Gold Pony, and he gives me his time to do this interview, so I feel in some way indebted to him.
He did the theme song for this podcast.
Did he really?
Yeah.
He's so talented.
Yeah.
So yeah, in the moment, like that's what's pushing me forward, is like to create something that at least if the person I'm interviewing, if they get something out of it, if they feel proud that their words are encapsulated in this cool presentation, you know, that's the main thing I'm thinking about, you know, to push out otherwise the invisible audience of critics or whoever. So it's a way to pay off the debt to each person in the magazine so they can feel proud of it themselves.
So I wanted to ask you, before we got into Philip K. Dick and Ubik, I wanted to ask you in terms of the magazine, like, what's the process? I'm really interested in this, like, because
oh man,
you're doing this all by yourself. So like, I just wonder, like, where did you start? Like the nitty gritty of like how you got to that first issue anyway.
It's hard to even like define a process because it's such a hectic, and I'm not a very orderly, structured person. I mean, it's it sounds like fairly
amen,
common
brother.
for, yeah. That's like my girlfriend's job. She's much more is it the right excuse me, whatever the side of the brain is, like the structured, ordered one. I'm definitely not that. So she kind of like keeps me in line, and I'm spiraling out and whatever. There's a lot of like, I got my dual monitors here, so I'll like just throw up InDesign on the left monitor, and on the right I'll have whatever collage of images to kind of inspire me and go on. I'll say like what I started.
So you've got like a mood board on one screen, and you just sort of like, oh, interesting.
Well, okay, so what I started with AV issue 1 was the interviews themselves, and I was throwing them up on the website. Adam Lairs, Aaron Fagans, and Gold Ponies. We didn't throw online because he was running for the police force or something like that, and you know, we had certain like red flag words like right-wing extremism and stuff in there, so we didn't want to throw that into the Google algorithm. So I was like, well, fuck it.
The police in Florida really care about that, though. I don't think they do.
It's probably a plus, yeah. But basically, I had the interviews, and then I kind of let the content of the interviews dictate each feature's design or the aesthetic. And then as I was learning InDesign as I was going, just to keep me in that erotic zone, I had like 70s porn up on the other screen, and some of those snapshots you can like see in issue 1. What was the main one I was watching was Behind the Green Door. Just yeah, because I mean those 70s porn.
You had it playing.
Done. I had it playing.
Oh, that's awesome! I love this.
Yeah.
So you do have a process.
Yeah. I guess it works out that way. It's in the moment, it feels a lot like staring at the screen, and then like chain smoking around the block, and then coming back to the screen, and then going to bed feeling like a total failure. But it comes together. I read that like Kanye would have just porn blasting while he's doing his work. And then I think that was like a Rolling Stones article where they're trying to like paint that as a negative. I'm like, no, that's the work of a genius. That's, you know, that's a bona fide artist. But yeah, that's more or less it. I record the interviews, transcribe them, let the content of them dictate the style and the form. At least with issue 1. Issue 2, I had more of a sense of what I wanted in issue 2 going forward, where it's like, okay, I want, you know, this amount of long form interviews, this amount of email Q&As, whatever small features, a photo series, and kind of like loose, you know, about how each person wants to go about it. There's a loose, I say texture instead of theme. Like there's not really themes to these issues, but issue 2 is more like cowboy western,
love that,
you know, like cowhide kind of stuff. And that for me is a bit
chaps. Are there chaps?
I'll throw in some chaps. There's still room for that. More farm animal kind of stuff. It's more, I don't think I need to throw in some chaps because it's very female. It's more lesbianic than.
You got to toss a bone to all your like gay podcasters that you've.
Yeah. Yeah. So issue 2, I have more of a sense of what I want. And, you know, like I said, I had a kid in November. So there's just a good few months where I'm just in that newborn haze of doing nothing and like sleep deprived, and the days just kind of melting into each other. Now that the baby can like just sit and chill, I've just been cruising through the work. And really as with any creative project, which is, this to me is a creative project. Like there's a sense of discovery and not knowing what I'm going to get out of the day, which is fun. Just when you finally sit down and have the time to sit and just do it, it just kind of emerges, you know?
I love it. And I love that. And also it makes complete sense reading the first issue anyway, that like, you know, you've got porn playing, you've got like a mood board of images, and then you're sort of like, you know, trying to kind of commingle it all together in a way. Like it's almost like you're summoning some kind of like
it does
erotic spirit or something like that. And that's really kind of evident in the first issue. So
perfect.
Wonderful. You do have a process, see?
It's there. I don't know if I've defined it for myself, but it's just it feels instinctual, but it's there. It's and like I have an articulate sense of like what the erotic is and like Eros and all that. And I think I mentioned that in issue 1 that like it's we're following the edicts of Eros rather than any sort of reactionary politics. Which that's just going to come with it, you know. So that's another, like, there's a lot of like I love magazines, but I'm constantly frustrated with them, and they're just like Playboy's a good example where it sells itself as this work of erotic material, but it's really, to me, really just flat and unerotic. And there's some great stuff. I mean, it's a great monolith of like men's entertainment publication, whatever.
What is Playboy like these days, by the way? Like,
oh God, I haven't checked in that world in quite a while. Like, to me, late 90s Dazed, that's sort of like Y2K 1999 to me is like the pinnacle of like magazine design and material. And there's just so much rich substance there, even down to like the typeset, you know, the font and everything. You can.
Oh yeah, I remember Playboy, especially in those years. Like
Playboy's great.
When we were in high school, like we used to have like a little stash in these like drains near where we grew up. These big sort of like circular drains, and then there was like a flood, and then they all washed away like tears in the rain.
Oh no, dude, that's so sad.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I don't know. Like much of art and culture in the 2010s, like that's all just kind of gone to shit. My like the last Dazed issue I got, and probably the last great Dazed issue was the Lana Del Rey one from I think 17. And even then, like looking at the design of the work. It's much more smooth and flat and uninspired to its former self. Or even like look at like Vice magazine. If you want to look at like something that's great on a content
thanks.
level. Yeah. Like the Gavin McInnes days when he was like running the show, like the written word was just so fun and just shooting from the hip. He is a very like phallic, dick in your eye way of like writing, you know.
And that was like the early online videos too were like that too, and then they kind of went to shit.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's kind of the thing. It's like I just needed to feel hot blooded. That's why I love Matthew Patio, like Matthew Denicola's photo series and his style in general. Like he's my favorite go-to photographer because he just has an innate sense of all of his subjects in his photos. Like they're people with a intact endocrine system and you know you're
not going to start railing about seed oils, are you?
No. Yeah. No. Yeah, speaking of that, yeah, because there's a sort of like resurgence of like reactionary right-wing magazines, and some of them have decent design. Because on the flip side, there's also like the sort of like post Sam Hyde spastic schizo Infowars mesh of really harsh, ugly meme style, which then like it goes so far on the other end that it kind of reverts back to the same sort of like this is just a bunch of nothing, you know. So it still has to feel real in a sense, which I forget the main question, but yeah, I'll go from there.
Yeah, it's an amazing magazine and I recommend it to everyone. I will put a link up to it so people can go and purchase it if they so choose. But you should choose because it's a really great magazine. When's the second issue coming out?
Okay, I'm hoping to have a release date next week.
Okay, awesome.
This weekend, I'm going to solve my final problems of how to do what I'm doing and
your final solution.
My final solution, and then I'm so eager to get issue 2 out because I love issue 1. I'm happy that people love it, but to me it just seems so crude compared to the vision I have, and it seems much more realizing too. And I mean, I'm already like thinking forward to issue 3 and already have like that sort of like the skeleton of that coming together.
So are you doing it on a schedule or just like whenever they're ready sort of thing?
I want to, right now it's when they're ready.
Yeah.
As I figured out, but I want to at least do like a spring, summer, fall, like 4 per year. I mean, when this machine really gets going, it'd be sick to just start churning them out. But I mean, the big project is like make this a multimedia, print is just gonna be one facet of this. Like, there's a lot I want to do with American Bulgaria beyond just print. But print's where I'm at now. So if I can get 4 out a year, that'd be sick. Because I would like to too. I don't want to force myself on too rapid of a schedule, and so it becomes a sort of like you just plug in, and it becomes like this strict format. I want. Yeah.
You're waiting in.
Yeah. Keep that sense of discovery and experimentation with each one.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. So I'll link to the magazine. Should buy it. And as Ryan said, the next issue will be out next week, which probably by the time this comes out will be that week. It depends what day you're releasing it.
Yeah.
But, so the other thing I wanted to ask you before we get into good old PKD is I can tell by your editorship of the magazine and obviously the exchanges, the back and forths we've had that and just hearing now that you're an English major.
That's right.
That you're a pretty well-read guy. So other than PKD, what have you been reading lately?
I'm reading Proust right now.
Oh, God.
I know.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so good too. It's I'm
Which
getting
one?
back into In Search of Lost Time. I just finished or I guess mine is Remembrance of Things Past. Just finished Swan's Way. It's Have you read that?
No, I haven't. I haven't read any Proust actually.
It's
Remiss
so
of me.
good.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because he's one, like, he's kind of become a meme of like big lit,
Yeah.
in the way of like Joyce and the great modernists. But I'm reading him.
Big gay too. You're being a straight pick me again.
Is he? Yeah, he is, isn't he? Yeah. Dude, that's just how art and culture is. It's all gay. Reading Proust. I picked up the new Cormac McCarthy.
Oh yeah, both of them.
Both of them.
Yeah.
I like Cormac. I like this too. I was actually low expectations. He's pretty old, and the fact that he's like still got it. I mean, it's not my favorite, but I'm enjoying it. I'm proud of him.
Still got the juice.
He's still got the juice.
Yeah.
Let's see what else. I usually have just like a stack of like 5 books. I mean,
Same.
lately,
do you read them at the same time? That's what I do.
I do. Yeah. I actually, for when I was really on top of it, I would always have like a work of fiction, a work of like a book of essays, book of poetry, and just whatever.
Whoa. That's way too autistic for me.
Yeah. Well, that was when I was recently post grad, unemployed, and had the time to just,
oh yeah,
I can had to like make.
I remember those days.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great way to like meet people too, to like have a stack of books out and like, somewhere in public, and people was like, "Oh, you reading that?" Really, I mean, after issue 1, I've been just buying a shit ton of magazines, and that's been like my literary project. That I don't even read. I just like the design, but
it's research, right? It's like market research kind of.
It's so, well, yeah, and it's also like a way to have a bad habit of like just spending, and just constant on eBay, seeing what deals I can get on whatever. This is like one of my favorite ones lately. Is this
Gossips?
Yeah, this Japanese tabloid kind of thing, but.
Oh, so
yeah.
Obviously you can't read it. You're just sort of looking at, unless you know Japanese.
I don't. I'll ask Zach about this.
Mm.
Yeah, Proust is the big one right now, which has been fun.
Yeah. How are you finding it? You said it was really good, but like what?
Oh God, he's there's what's the girl's name? Mathilde. She's a writer in New York who wrote about him, and she had a great quote that's like, when you read Proust, you become like Proustian, because it's all like he's just so observant to, in that typical modernist way of like, the mundane aspects of life, but on such an eloquent, beautiful, grandiose scale. About like him going on walks or reading his books and the feeling he feels and his sense of nostalgia. And there's so much there. It's so rich. It's like, it's in his writing style too, is just so you have to reread each sentence to really fully grasp everything happening there. It's really intimidating but easy to read, because like Joyce is like Ulysses. You read that and it's like, what the fuck is going on? Proust, what's going on, but it's just so dense and beautiful. Hard to even explain beyond. It's the greatest thing.
Amazing. And you don't even have to do a podcast for this. You're just doing it for fun, right?
Well, that one was prescribed me by Jack for TPN. So he's reading all the huge books right now for Perfume Nest. We'll see when we get to it. But yeah, that won't be for a podcast.
Wonderful. I love it. As we were talking before we recorded, is reading making a comeback? Maybe, I don't know, but like, I feel like reading should. And also reading fiction in particular, is the only way out of current thingism.
It really is. yeah, like rehumanizes you. You know,
Yeah,
it's
because
like it's like what everyone. Well, and it's a discipline. You know, not to make it sound shitty, but like, um, all that time you're reading is like you're physically removed from Twitter. You know, and you're creating that psychological distance. But it's yeah, everything human and spiritual missing from Twitter is like right there in that book. You know,
because because like. Yeah, the thing that's great about books versus any other media, I think, is that you are so completely ensconced in like another life world. And I think people really need that now when it's weird because like there are a whole heap of different individual perspectives that like just assault you day by day. But then when you get like a fully realized kind of life world in a book, that's a different experience altogether and kind of takes you out of that and the spectral rape that is social media.
Right. And not to say too that like all readers have it figured out. I mean, doing the an English degree, you'll find some of the dumbest fucking people imaginable.
I did an English degree. I know.
God. And like a lot of your peers are like, they're well read, but then you talk to them, you're like, dude, how did you get that out of this book, or how did you not get this? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
and
that's
people
also
who are paid professional critics who like review books and stuff like that miss like the point of books constantly. Like it's not just Goodreads freaks who don't get what a book is. It's like people who are paid to get what books are don't get it. So like, you know, I'm very much about like, everyone should read and but don't be like hung up on like being well read. Like you were saying before, I like Glenn's approach, you know, just like guys reading books, do it, you know, like just do it. Like I wish there were more like straight guy book clubs. Instead of making book clubs just like a middle-aged women in pashmina thing, like it should be like guys in trucker hats.
I was laughing about that with my girlfriend, you know, doing these podcasts. I'm like, this feels like the way men would like go bowling or whatever the fuck, and then hit up the bars and have a few drinks and shoot the shit. I'm like, that's these podcasts and these little like knitting book groups is like the new way for men to just hang out and
bull sessions of the 1960s, like Neil Farley.
Exactly. Yeah.
But anyway, we should probably get into talking about the fucking book now. So like I was trying to think about like the background to this, like why we decided to do this. And I'm pretty sure it was, we had an interaction in Kelby Losak's, Twitter replies. Cause I think he mentioned something about, this is when he was still on Twitter. He mentioned something about, Philip K. Dick. And I was just like, I was just being, I think I was drunk and I was like, Ubik.
Yeah.
And you were like, yeah, Ubik's awesome. And I was like, I've always wanted to do Ubik on the podcast. So I was like, then I wrangled you, Ryan, into talk about Ubik because I know so few people who have read this book. And also it's the kind of book where, you know, as a podcaster, especially when you're doing books mostly, I mean, I do some other media, but when you're doing books and you invite someone to come on and you give them a homework assignment, you know, like sometimes you're a little bit hesitant because like, what is this person going to think about this book in particular? But if someone had already read Ubik, like it's perfect. So I was glad to find that you'd already read it. And also I love when whole episodes of podcasts just come out of social media interactions, especially on Twitter, because that's what Twitter used to be. Like people don't remember this. Like I remember like 6 accounts ago when I first got on Twitter in like 2009, it was so different because people found each other based on like shared interest and shit like that. And you had amazing like conversations and interactions. It's not like that anymore, but like sometimes it is. And that I think is really great. So
yeah, you have to be very active in finding your niche and sticking to it and like actively avoiding the discourse. And the quote unquote conversation. Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy it worked out that way, because it was just a brief appraisal of Ubik and turned into this, which I'm amped I get to be the Ubik guy. I was saying this on Sam's podcast, Third Place, that I'm happy to be the Max Payne guy. Anything I'm assigned for these podcasts, I love, and I take very personal now, and like for the rest of my life, I'm the Ubik guy.
Yeah, Ubik is like probably. We'll get into Ubik, but I want to talk a little bit about Philip K. Dick first. So most people have probably heard of him. I'm guessing. I hope so. Most people have probably watched an adaptation of his work. Probably Blade Runner's the most famous.
Blade Runner, Minority Report,
Adjustment Bureau, Total Recall. We'll talk about Total Recall in a sec.
That one's sick.
But with Philip K. Dick, I think the primary thing you need to know about him is that he, in terms of his biography, is that he kind of suffered from a lot of hallucinations in his life, and this sort of distorted his perspective on reality. Probably linked to that, but he abused a few drugs, which probably didn't help things in terms of his grip on reality. But weirdly, like this sort of distorted perspective that he had is kind of what makes his fiction so compelling.
Absolutely.
And weird and haunting. And also it's kind of, you read his stuff and it's kind of uncomfortable as well. At least I feel like that.
Ubik especially is very unsettling.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, like you read it when you're young and it's just kind of trippy and fun and cool, but read it later and when you're older and like, oh fuck, dude.
Yeah. Like a lot of the time, not just in Ubik, but like especially a lot of his later work, because I think he was kind of going off the deep end when he was getting older. But a lot of his later work, you feel like you're reading the ravings of a madman.
Oh man,
in the best possible way. Like,
I'm excited to get to that because I still haven't read much by him. I've read this and I think just Electric Sheep, and I started Scanner Darkly just now.
Oh my God. You've got I haven't read it yet, but I've read excerpts of it. The Exegesis, which is like his 8,000 page, like rundown of like his philosophy, his beliefs, and like diary entries, his life, all this sort of shit. I'm like, I have to read this, but also I feel like I don't want to because I don't want my mind to break. I don't want to snap and have a like schizophrenic episode.
Right. Yeah.
Not that I'm schizophrenic, but you know, I feel like it will turn me schizophrenic. But like sorry.
So he like goes, he doesn't become Christian, does he? Or like he becomes religious or like has a sort of proverbial coming to Christ moment.
He's kind of like, I don't know whether he became Christian, but like in a lot of his work, and I was going to talk about this a little bit later, so we'll just flag that he's got a sort of Gnostic like approach to things. I'll talk about Gnosticism later, but
please do, because that's a term that every time I try to approach it, it's just like water through my fingers. It like Gnosticism does not stick. I do not understand.
Well, it's probably like the first time I read Ubik, which was like I was saying before we recorded, was like I think it was like 20 or something, and I was like, cool telepathy, man. It's awesome.
Right, yeah.
It's trippy science fiction, dude.
So is he gonna fuck Pat? I don't get it.
But now reading it now, it's just like, fuck, this is crazy. But yeah, so that uncomfortability sort of factor with him when you read his stuff, I think is really, it's really unsettling. Like I said, you feel like you're reading the ravings of a madman. Like, and it's almost like if you were on the street and some like crazy homeless person started offering you their off the chain theories about reality or something, and you're just sitting there engaging with it and like as if just okay, all right, like just listening to this person like wading into their swampy delusion with them, and you read his stuff and you're like, it's the same if you're like just indulging a mentally ill homeless person. You're like, should I be indulging this? Like,
yeah.
This person needs help, but then again, like, maybe he's onto something. Like,
Sure.
especially when he's being extra crazy. Like I don't know, like it's this. That's the thing that makes it unsettling for me, or one of the things that makes his work unsettling for me.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is like he is a twin survivor. Like he was born a twin, and his twin sister died shortly after birth. I interviewed this artist in 2019 who she was a painter, and her twin had just died, and she was like in her 30s or 40s, so she's an adult, but she basically was explaining how she went through a psychotic episode where, and apparently this is common with like twin death, where the surviving twin so identifies with their twin sibling that when they die, they have this moment of like, am I dead? Or what part of me is still alive or dead? And like, she felt like she was dead, or like this, the world she was in was not real or whatever. And she mentioned Philip K. Dick as an example of this as well. And that like much of his sci-fi and his like, precarious sense of reality likely stems from that, or, being a twin survivor, to like get on like a deep Freudian, maybe Jungian level with Dick, which there's just the underlying like tragedy of his sci-fi tropes, which is funny, like talking like the sci-fi genre is very tropey, and it relies on so many tropes, and they're all there with Dick, but he kind of skates through them and is hitting at something that seems much more personal and deeper and different. Like when he's exploring the simulation or alternate realities or what is real, it seems like he's really, really trying to like pierce at something, like for himself. It's just, it seems very intimate with him and important in a way that's kind of lends to like what makes it so unsettling. And yeah.
Yeah, he does. The way he uses tropes is really impressive, actually, because he, like, for instance, we're sort of talking about him in general at the moment, but we'll get into Ubik. But like, he will introduce a trope and then completely like deconstruct it, like the next chapter. He does this constantly in Ubik. But in terms of being a science fiction writer too, he has like this kind of like mad oracle kind of prescience. Like he's sort of like in terms of like predicting the future. And it's not so much like we were talking before. It's not so much the technology stuff. Like obviously in Ubik and some of his other stuff that he did in the 60s and 70s, like, the technology is sort of like, retro. It's coins and paper. People are still using this stuff. But like, what he gets right, I think, in a lot of his work is especially about the future, which is for us now, is like this sort of epistemological, ontological unease or uncertainty that kind of exists now that we're all living in, which like he just like he like pinpointed that just so perfectly. Like it almost doesn't matter about the tropes and the technology extrapolations or whatever. He predicted that, like that is like perfectly.
yeah, absolutely. That's funny because the book group I read this in, so I was in like an Infinite Jest book group where, spent the summer reading Infinite Jest, and then the few remainders who made it through it decided to just keep going. We picked up Ubik.
How many made it through it?
It would start with like 30 and like ended with like 6,
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And like we're saying pre-recording, like, Missoula, Montana is a pretty libtard city. And so a lot of like the common discussion around Ubik was like focused on the sort of like Marxist reading of, everything's commodified.
Oh, which is wrong, by the way. But anyway.
yeah. Which it's very easy to go that route with Ubik, but it's so reductive and focus. Yeah, they focus on that, which is really frustrating for me because it goes that is even like, it's like, oh, who get, yeah, that sucks, and that is how things are, whatever, everything's subscription and you got to put your coins into the washing machine.
That's just like the comedy elements of it. Like
it serves itself as it's funny. And I was reading, like I was going through like my Wikipedia research, 10 minutes before this on K Dick, that he is sort of like a communist turned left libertarian. Very much.
I think he pretty much, like a lot of American leftists in particular, went a bit anti-communist. So maybe earlier he was, but
very, very San Francisco.
Yeah.
You can see why it's like the libertarian kind of the hellscape it is now.
Yeah. Slouching towards Bethlehem kind of.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But that was like, our discussion was just so reductive around that, which frustrated me because, what was prescient about it was this sort of, unstable sense of reality, and the way he like comedically uses the commercialization of like Ubik, which is also like this godly substance, and like just to broaden out the rest of the K-Dick, like that's even like an Electric Sheep, the way there's a sort of like a religious element around whatever that TV show they all watch, and then the empathy box, which is, he's kind of like predicting Death Stranding, with that, where everyone has to imagine themselves as this guy walking and getting hit with a rock, whatever, and that the shared empathy they have around this figure is a sort of like Christ-like religious experience, which if you're doing the cynical reductive read, it's like, oh, he's mocking religion. It's like, no, he's kind of like laying out the mechanics of it and showing its direction, where it's going with new media and new ways of experiencing the world,
Yeah, like I think you were talking about the way that just in general in his work, the real is kind of merges with the fake and vice versa, and you never know what's what, like, or at least where the end of one begins and the start of another does, like. And I think there's, in a lot of his work, there's a kind of ambient existential distrust, like,
yeah.
And I feel that kind of lends itself to the current era, especially with like social media or whatever, which is like a really kind of, I think, a very hackneyed point, but like, people don't know what to believe, right? And there's a sort of sense of paranoia about everything you see. And like, I know that I have that, even as someone who I think I'm fairly critical about, what I absorb and everything, but I still am a little bit at sea. And I feel like everyone, in terms of what I can know to be true, and I feel like everyone is Philip K. Dick now.
Yeah. I like that specific what this came out in 69.
69, yes.
Yeah. I mean, that specific era of like paranoid fiction between like him and Pynchon and whoever else, like that's a very Western thing. I was talking to the Agitator guys about this, that the rise of like electric technology and media, even though it was pioneered on the West in many ways, like the West wasn't prepared for it in the way that the East was, because the West is a very seen as believing, you got the eye, the Egyptian eye atop the pyramid, the way like Paglia lays out. And this is me giving a very shitty like Marsh McLuhan read on media or whatever, but the West, I think part of that paranoia stems from electric technology. For the first time, like you don't see the message being delivered. It's all through wires or whatever. It's very just kind of out there. And you see in like a lot of like Eastern art, like anime and stuff, like they seem to have a better, much more calm response to it. Like they seem to intuitively get it because their whole spiritual paradigm is about like the flux and flow of energy, whereas in the West, like
it's more animist over
it's
there.
Personalities, and like we have to fixate on celebrity figures and personalities to explain things to us, and quote unquote experts. Everything's personified in a certain way. So I think much of like that, just in terms of like the time period and like the zeitgeist of Dick and Pynchon, and I can't think of any other ones, but like that postmodern moment, Western paranoia is like dealing with media, because a lot of like Dick is him. It's media focused, and it's focused on the communication of info through media, and everything's mediated in a certain way. And what does that mean, in terms of, or having a stable sense of what is real and what isn't, and what are the underlying forces at play. Lynch, I think, is an artist of this vein as well, like David Lynch, who kind of maps this out and is sort of like surreal. It's funny because when I was reading Ubik, I kept thinking, I kept relating it to Twin Peaks and its sense
same.
Yeah. Which I didn't get the first time, but like his sense of good and evil as these that there is a binary good and evil, this like ancient primordial force of like light and darkness that we could only apprehend through these personified forces or images,
But there's so much in between that like disrupts your ability to tell them apart as well. Like this, like it's clear that they have this idea of good and evil, but it's also like you got to make sure that you know what good and evil is, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You got to work it out.
Yeah,
it's like a puzzle.
And it's never, you get the vagues. It's a very, they even say it like in the book Ubik, like it's I think Joe Chip in one of his inner monologues, he's like saying how like him trying to figure out where he like he likes the symmetry of like life and death, but everything else is like kind of messy. He uses like the word messy, and like that is again back to like the unsettling nature of like Dick's work. Like you're just very loosely grasping at what is what, and you're catching glimpses of what is good and evil, and if it even is good and evil, or right or wrong, or real or artificial. You're getting these momentary glimpses at a time, and you can maybe piece it together along with the characters in the books themselves. And when you finish it too, it's like you're left with such a kaleidoscopic image of the full picture,
Okay. So, want to talk a little bit more about Philip K. Dick, but especially before we get into Ubik specifically, our first encounter with his work. So where did you first encounter him? This can be either short stories, books, or movies. I'm going to say my first encounter, as far as I can remember, would be the Arnold Schwarzenegger film Total Recall.
Yeah.
Which is like one of my favorite films. It's so good. Like, and it often cops a lot of flack for like not being the most faithful adaptation. It's based on his short story, We Can Remember It For You Wholesale. And the fact that it has Arnold Schwarzenegger is probably a sticking point for a lot of people, because it's like this cerebral short story that like Paul Verhoeven, bless his soul, has turned into this like fucking exploitation, violent science fiction action film. But I think it's great. I always have, like, and not in an ironic way. I think it's genuinely great. The woman with 3 titties alone, like, just makes it perfect. Like, and I've always loved that scene where they walk into the sex club. It's like there's midgets, there's like mutant women, there's like guys with like fucked up faces and like people with extra limbs and shit. And like, yes, this is what a like sleazy sex club would be like on Mars, and it's great. I don't even care that it probably wasn't in the short story. Like, it's just perfect.
No, I haven't read that short story, but that one, I think about that a lot. Total Recall's one I'll just like throw on just to have on while I'm going about my business. That like distinct Verhoeven camp sensibility, whether or not like the movie or the story is like true to the Dick story, the sort of like towards the end when they're like, the outer space fucking like pressures, like their eyeballs are
like,
yeah. That does feel true to Dick's sense of unreality, that the absurdity of it and the artificiality of it is like leans into like none of this is real, you know, within the artifice of his movie and Verhoeven's sensibility, but like it feels, I don't know, smart. And,
it's still, even though it's got like these action set pieces, like it's got one of the best, like I remember in like the 80s and 90s and all the action films, you had the bitch fight with like the 2 women, like they're always like doing karate or something. It's always great. Boobs jiggling and like but like between Sharon Stone and Rachel Ticotin, like, but you've got all that sort of shit, obviously, but it is actually still pretty Dickian, if that's a word, because it's like, what's real, what's not? Is this all like a manifest sort of delusion of the main character? And, you know, even in the last sort of scene where he's like, is this a dream? And she's like, she's like, if it is, kiss me quick before you wake up. I love it. It's like the best way to end a movie, because it's like, wait, is it a dream?
Yeah.
I fucking love that movie so much. It's so rewatchable too.
It's a perfect movie. I love it. That one I didn't watch until later. Probably like my first Dick was Minority Report.
The movie or the short story?
The movie. I never read the short story. And that, like, you know, you got Tom Cruise and Colin Farrell, who are very cool guys when you're my age, coming of age, and you have your celebrity role models. Like, those guys are fucking cool. That was probably my first interaction with anything Dick. That I didn't even think about later. I didn't even know that was like Philip K. Dick was behind it. The first like Dick I read was Ubik, after I graduated in that Infinite Jest book group. And then after I read Electric Sheep, and then really kind of saw what he was about. But I'm still catching up on a lot of it. He, ever since reading Ubik and Electric Sheep, you know, with Blade Runner and all that. Like I've been fascinated with him and attributed much to him in my mind of like being the pioneer of the sort of the whole Matrix simulation concept and all that, you know, like he's the Stephen King of sci-fi, you know, as a prolific author, and then just really kind of owning an entire concept. But yeah, Ubik was my really formal starting point with him.
It's a great place to start.
Yeah.
Also a great place to end. Well, it's kind of the apotheosis of all his work, I think. Not that I've read all of it. I've read Electric Sheep and what's the other one? High Castle, The Man in the High Castle, and this one, obviously. And you know,
isn't that a Prime show now?
It is. I haven't seen that though.
I don't. Yeah.
I don't really believe in Amazon TV shows.
No, yeah. Yeah.
But I don't think they're real. So that's my Philip K. Dick.
They're not real.
Sort of perspective on it. Not real, just an illusion in Half-Life. So Ubik. Okay, so Ubik is kind of, like I said, apotheosis of Dick's work. And I'm kind of trying to think about how to summarize this fucking book because it's so convoluted and like, it's kind of impossible to summarize. You can kind of give a few, you know, a breakdown of all the plot points or whatever. I guess like, you know, like if like lots of Dick's work, it's science fiction set in the future. What was very current at that time in the sort of mid to late 60s in science fiction was the idea of psionic powers. So like telepathy and stuff like that, which is something I'm going to do Alfred Bester soon, which will be, which covers sort of similar ground.
Oh, sick.
Have you read him?
No.
It's amazing.
That's with Gold Pony?
Yes.
Hell yeah.
You spoilers.
Sorry. Yeah. Beep.
Okay, so in Ubik, there's telepaths, there's like people with psionic powers who can like see the future, things like that. And because of this, we've got like an issue with privacy and discretion, wherein these things become kind of valuable commodities. And corporations especially kind of need to counteract these abilities in order to like make sure that business functions, right? And to that end, we're introduced to Glenn Runsiter, who runs what's called a prudence company, which I fucking love that term.
Yeah.
And so he employs anti-psionics, or like what they call inertials. So which are people who can counteract telepaths.
Yeah, he's like John McAfee in like antivirus software.
And I just like, I don't even remember if he was doing this in the text, but I can just imagine him with like a cigar in his swivel chair being like,
yeah,
I want those reports on my desk by Monday.
Well, part of it too is like he's like maybe upwards of like almost 100 years old, being sustained by like prosthetic organs, and God, there's so much going on with this. With like you got the telepath and the psionic stuff, you got the artificial organ stuff, which is a really minimal side note, and then you got the whole like Tibetan Book of the Dead, you know, side. Like it's so. There's so many big ideas slopped together, which is what makes it hard to like summarize, because it's
in like a 200-page book.
It's insane that it actually works. Because I remember the first time I read it, I was kind of aggravated where I didn't know which philosophical plot line I should be holding on to, you know, and it kind of like uses that to fuck with you, where it's like, is this some psychological telepathy thing? Is this the underworld? Is this, what is this? You know, is this all commercial or, Yeah.
What is this? That's a
Yeah.
great,
What is, even
great-
beyond the premise, like what is the book doing here?
what's going on here?
Yeah.
So yeah, and sort of to summarize this, you have to basically go through all of that, all of the different philosophies, all of the different characters, even some characters who are like red herrings in like the mystery, because the mystery relies on you like knowing the red herrings to sort of get that it's an inversion of what the red herrings that are introduced and things like that. So in addition to all of that, like the telepathy stuff, we've also got this concept, which is half-life, which is that people who die can be put into this like suspended animation thing that's kind of between life and death before they're reincarnated, where your consciousness sort of exists in a kind of simulation. And Glenn Runsiter, who I mentioned before, his wife Ella is in this state, and the book kind of opens with him talking to her, and then she's sort of interrupted by this character called Jory, who is like this really annoying presence, who actually ends up being a malevolent presence, as we find out later on.
Yeah, he's like the Bob of Ubik.
Yes. And then, like, subsequent to that, we're introduced to Joe Chip, who is like my favorite character in this book.
Yeah, he's so great.
He's like one of Runsiter's contractors, and he's sort of like a down on his luck schmo. Who kind of, he meets a woman named Pat, who is
Pat Conley,
who is inertial, who can counteract precognition, so telepaths who can tell the future. And basically what she does is she can counteract it by basically rewriting the past. Are you with me, people?
Yeah.
Like, before we talk about Pat, like I said, I love Joe Chip because I love how much of a loser he is.
Yeah,
like,
he's like a loser, and he's in debt to the point he can't even like operate his coin operated appliances in his home, but he's also like indispensable to this major with the Prudence. He's indispensable to Runsider's business. That whole dynamic's really funny, that he's such like a loser that even though he's this top-notch employee or genius or whatever, that he just can't help but be a loser,
he sucks.
Just makes all the bad decisions.
Yeah. And like the funniest, or one of the fun, this book is actually really funny. Like a lot of the reviews and like the commentary around it has like obviously talked about like the disturbing, unsettling nature of it, like we talked about it at the front. Like with a lot of Dick's work, it is, but like his chapters, especially before the kind of main mission, are really fucking funny. Like when he's arguing with the door.
Yeah.
Let me out. I've got to go to work. And it's like, one nickel, please, or whatever, however much it costs.
Dude, that actually pissed me off because it's like because it's like these operating systems like Siri or Alexa talking back, but they're like sassy and like condescending and above you. And that feels very relevant and relatable now.
That's what I mean about like how the technology is obviously not, he didn't make like, accurate prognostications about what the technology is going to be like, but like the vibe is like there. Like this is what the world we live in is like.
Yeah. Like right now, Siri's kind of polite towards us, but imagine it starts talking back. It's like, nah, I'm not going to do that.
She already does. Fuck you, Siri. I wonder if my phone just... Siri, fuck you. No, it didn't do anything. Okay, so yeah, and so that's really funny because it's like it starts out, you get the Runsiter plot line, and then you're introduced to Joe Chip, and he's introduced to Pat Conley, who is kind of like a femme fatale sort of thing. So like I said earlier, those tropes that he's hitting on, that's part of the setup, but it really isn't going where you think it's going.
No.
So basically, Runsiter, Pat, and so Pat comes in and is introduced to Runsiter and Joe. They all go on this mission to the moon.
Yeah, well, I guess the antithesis or whatever to the antagonist would be like Ray Hollis,
who's the kind of rival of Runsiter.
Yeah, he's just kind of out there doing his evil deeds, and Runsiter's he protects people from him, but Hollis's talents have gone missing, and so they think they found them with this contract that's very hastily thrown at Runsiter, but it's like his like once in a lifetime big opportunity it's his big score, so he just kind of jumps at it.
And so they go to the moon and like this kind of facility at the moon, and this turns out to be a trap.
I love too that talking about like sci-fi tropes and stuff, that they just go to the moon and
they're just like hop on
within
over
like
to the moon.
It's like from one paragraph they're talking about the next they're on the moon, and it doesn't do the whole like explaining the thrusters on the spaceship engage and
like they're just on the moon. And so actually that turns out to be a trap, and a bomb explodes. And I loved this section of the bomb because it's like this really annoying character who like has this really piercing, like gross, like metallic voice, who just like then inflates and explodes and like injures like them all.
It's this Looney Tunes fucking explosion, and
so then what happens is that Runsiter is injured. The rest of the group rushes him to Switzerland of all places, so he can be, because he's so badly injured that he has to be put into half-life like his wife. And while that's happening, they're trying to work out what the hell happens. And the rest of the book is basically a series of weird events with like food and cigarettes going stale, machines transforming into earlier models, and like time itself starts regressing. Some of the inertials on the team start to die and their bodies start to decay really fast. And initially, we're talking about red herrings as well. Initially, Pat, the anti-precognition chick, the femme fatale, is suspected of given that she can alter time. But eventually we kind of realize that Joe and the others are the ones who are in Half-Life. And it is Jory, the teenage boy we mentioned before, also in Half-Life, feeding on the mental energy of others, constructing kind of malevolent illusions as he goes. The only way is so convoluted. I'm trying to explain it all, but like it's really hard to explain unless you read the book. But so the only way to stave off the decay caused by Jory is, because Jory's feeding off the mental landscape of everyone in Half-Life, is Ubik, which is a aerosol can product that Runsiter is apparently constantly signaling about. As a sort of like a countermeasure, like they're constantly seeing images of Runsiter or ads for Ubik, other messaging that sort of is snuck into the simulated world of Half-Life. Joe Chip only realizes this at the end, and Ubik kind of grants him a sort of reprieve from Jory feeding on him. But the last chapter kind of turns all of this on its head by suggesting that Runsiter himself is in Half-Life, which is a kind of a double reversal of the original twist because Runciter sees manifestations of Joe Chip on coins that he picks up.
Yeah,
so
that's
it becomes,
right.
Yeah, so it becomes this like, what the fuck is going on? sort of
Yeah,
thing.
what do you do with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, because the whole time after the bomb explodes, there's the two tracks of the world around them is regressing in time, but certain like currency is quote unquote moving forward, with Runciter's face and what's funny about the regressions too, initially for like Joe Chip, who's this down on his luck loser, or it's even hard to say down on his luck. It just seems like he's just
A loser.
He's just a loser. Is that like him? The sequences of him realizing the regression stages is such like a Freudian emasculation of like he's holding his cigarette and it like falls apart in his hand, and then like the cream in his coffee is sour, and this like a Freudian nightmare of like of sexual impotence, like he's just I don't know. That's something the second read through is like he's really like because okay, when tentatively when they think that Runciter is out of commission, Joe Chip is second in command, so he becomes suddenly head of operations, and now he's the head honcho, and he's really momentarily enjoying it. And he's like, oh, now I got all the business funds, and I'm out of debt now. But the world around him is like decaying in such a way that there's no way out, of him just being a loser. And
yeah, he doesn't have the ticker for it. Like it's almost
yeah.
like it's the world shows him that he like,
yeah,
you think you're going to be the boss, but like you ain't. So I'd be interested to know, because we both read this a couple of times. You read it with your book club.
yeah.
And I read it when I was very young. And I think before we recorded, I was saying how like when I first read it, when I was like probably 19, 20, I was like, oh yeah, man, trippy, telepathy, cool. This was when I was on that, 60s science fiction, telepathy, Alfred Bester, Philip K. Dick, telepaths trip, and I was just like, yeah, that's cool, man. But I feel like it went in one ear and out the other, because reading it now, it's just so much more disturbing. I was just like, this is cool, man, back when I was in my 20s, and now I'm just like, there's so much here, like it's like the nature of reality and all this sort of shit.
Yeah.
What about you? Like, what's your...
Yeah, same. I think the first time I read it, I thought what I remembered most was Joe Chip and his entire apartment being like the subscription service stuff and how funny that was, and like the quote unquote satire of like Ubik being this commercial product that at the start of every chapter is a mini ad or commercial, really highlighting how these different products called Ubik, basically the satire is like the anti-aging messaging of so much commercial products, and that he's thrown into this world of regression and decay, and that Ubik is what's going to counteract that. That I just kind of thought was funny the first time, but the second time through, again, I kept thinking like Twin Peaks, and it's similar. And also like I hadn't seen Enter the Void by Gaspar.
This is a good cup of Ubik.
yeah. Like Gaspar Noé being like the Enter the Void being akin to this in terms of like most of the movie inspired by the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which is mentioned in Ubik as well, is like this is what happens after you die, and you kind of reenact your past and the past, and the death, and that in this world of death or half-life that there's these forces of good and evil at play. I don't know how to articulate beyond that, like that. That's really scary and frightening, and Yeah.
With the afterlife and death and sort of stuff, I feel like is a danger with Philip K. Dick that you try to give an overarching theory about like what it means, because I feel like a lot of the stuff with his concerns with death in this book in particular, and yeah, you said there's the reference to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, but there's also reference to more like Western stuff, like the coins for one is like, you know, the ferryman with the coins. Like I think that's even mentioned very briefly at the end when I think that's referenced, you know, the ancient Greek practice of putting like 2 coins on the eyes for the ferryman to across the river Styx. Like the coins, there's that motif. There's obviously the reincarnation stuff, which they have shown in the book, like has been proven scientifically to exist. That
really,
they kind of mention that almost like
smoky red light kind of stuff.
And so, and then Ubik itself is like, I mean, I read Ubik, and especially every chapter, it begins with a little epigraph, which is like an ad for Ubik. And I kind of read those as just like signals from Runsiter, like trying to say Ubik's what you need to sort of stave off the monster.
Yeah.
But then, you know, all of this anti-aging, anti-death stuff, like it's all like, and there's that Marxist critique, which we talked about, which I don't think is very viable, but
it's there, but it's pretty reductive.
It's not the main point of the book, I don't think. To the extent there is a main kind of thrust, like there is the, you know, we consume things to distract ourselves from the fact that we're mortal and we're all going to die.
Sure. Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So there's that, but like on a more practical sort of level, I just think that those things it's just more stuff that Runsiter's trying to inject into the Half-Life simulacrum. But it could also be other things too, because that's the nature of Philip K. Dick's writing. Like it's never one thing, you know?
The final like double twist that introduced the possibility that actually Glenn Runsiter is dead and they're all actually alive. Excuse me. It almost posits that like life and death are just relative to each other, which make of that what you will, or that, you know, that's an interesting one. Like, not to get too weird or whatever. Like when I was
get weird,
when I was
come on, get weird.
When I was little, like my I'll call my father, like my brother's dad, like the guy who raised me, I called my dad, like he was killed when I was in first grade. And later in life, I learned that my mom, my aunt, and I held the same dream. But there's a dream I had when I was shortly after he died, where in this dream, you know, you go through your year of like Joan Didion's year of magical thinking, where you do your certain like daily rituals where you think you can keep this person alive or resurrect them, or that you avoid dealing with the fact that they died. And I had this very vivid dream where I woke up in my bed in this dream, and I went to the kitchen, and my mom was cooking dinner and she's crying, and my dad was sitting there, and his body was like, he was killed in a car wreck, and his body was mangled, you know, just this bloody mangled mess. And he looked at me and he said, don't wish me back into this world. This world is painful, and there's something else beyond this world that's not like, I'm not in pain anymore. Like, you guys are in the world of suffering, and there's another world that's not suffering, right? And that dream just kind of stuck with me for the rest of my life. And then it wasn't until I was in my 20s I told my mom about it, and she's like, I had the same exact dream, but he was in bed with me, and his body was mangled, and he told me the same thing. He's like, don't grieve for me, I grieve for you, because my body, this mangled body, is like the world that you're all inhabiting. You're in the world of suffering. I'm no longer in that, and there is something else. And then my aunt said the same thing too, that she was driving and he was in the passenger seat. Same exact thing, you know. And again, not to like get weird or whatever, but like it was for for each of us a sincere like visitation, and I think of like Philip K. Dick and his twin sister dying, and him feeling sincerely, mystically connected to the other side, the other side of the coin or whatever. And I feel a sense of realness there, like that hit the second read through, that he was engaging with that on a very, or Dick writing this, like that was his personal thing that he was working out there, that, life and death being two sides of the same coin, which is very trite and cliche, but like really trying to express that and articulate it and give it shape and form, there's something to that that's really haunting, and like, and you can't really think past that. Like it just, he presents that is what it is, and take with that what you will. But it felt like that's kind of what he was reaching at here, using this whole sci-fi tropey premise, but like that seems like the core of this,
Yeah. And that's the thing with his work as well, that is that it seems like it's reaching for one thing or another, but it's really hard to pin down a kind of single consistent explanation, especially in this book, for what's really going on as well. So every interpretation you can come up with, like it accounts for some things, but not others. And I think this is kind of purposely so. And I think this is because people who read science fiction are usually science-minded people, right? They want to untangle, and sort of view it as a puzzle, especially if there's like a mystery at the heart of it. It's like, it's this puzzle that can just, if you get all the pieces, you can work it out. If you've got a theory or whatever, you can understand the book or whatever. But I think he very actively disavows that kind of way of reading stuff. Yeah. Like, it's like he fully fucks with you constantly. Like, this whole book is it fucks with the reader in the same way that the character of Jory fucks with the people in Half-Life, right? Like, sure. It's interesting though, because in his the sort of last book that I think was published posthumously was the Exegesis that I mentioned before, which is this 8,000-page diatribe which summarizes all his work and his philosophy, all this sort of, there's diary entries and stuff like that in there as well. All of his assorted ravings, his crazy homeless person raving. But basically he says in that, which I haven't read all of it, I've just read excerpts of it. I might have to do an episode on the Exegesis, which will be that'd be incredible, mind-breaking experience. Yeah. But he says that Ubik is essentially the key to all his work. So really, yeah, I got this quote here that I'll read. So he says, Ubik is the paradigm, the half-life, the messages, Ubik itself, Runsita. We're in a sort of bubble of irreality, spurious world generated by plenary powers, astral determinism, whatever the fuck that is. Sure. And I like that bit at the end where he's like, whatever the fuck that is, like, because it kind of lends itself to the way that, you read his stuff. He's like, what the fuck was that? Like, yeah. And even he has that in writing it. Like, yeah. And so what he terms like this like bubble of irreality, like, if you're in a bubble of irreality, there's not going to be any consistency, and he sort of plays that out in this book in particular, I think.
One of the things when the crew is in Half-Life and the world is regressing, and Joe Chip starts to wonder if it's regressing at the same pace for everyone else, and it really hits at that like Plato idea of reality of being, your sense of the world is a projection of the mind in a way, and thus unreal, and that much of the lived experience is unreal. And to have a very assured confidence that what you're going through in life is 100% real is almost solipsistic, and you're you're to live in that paradigm is a very siloed off solipsism. Which, because I was reading that again in the Wikipedia that was Dick's belief in like reality being a form of solipsism, which I don't know if he actually believed or not, but that seems to be something he's playing at here. That, and that's a very like he's part of the postmodern canon kind of, but that was a very modernist idea of like cubism and Joyce and the lived experience being processed through your singular mind, and that to get at a full lived experience, you got to get multiple perspectives because in Ubik, for the mechanism of regression is that if everyone is together, then they can slow the pace of regression, or at least be on the same page, quote unquote, which is kind of an interesting, that's an interesting take on that reality has to be shared to be stable in a sense. Yeah.
Which sort of goes back to like his commie roots, maybe. Like, yeah, it's all about like everyone like interacting and interrelating.
Yeah.
To sort of work out what the fuck's going on,
Yeah.
The other thing about this, and he's written about this in some of his other work, but like this concept of Gnosticism, which I think a lot of people feel like this is, and even he's sort of said this in, again, the exegesis, the kind of Gnostic elements of this work, that it's a Gnostic text. Interestingly though, I don't think he was familiar with the Gnostic stuff before he wrote this. So it's almost like he's sort of retroactively looking back and saying, oh, this is a Gnostic text. In some of his
I'll
other
have to have Gnosticism explained to me, because it's
okay. So it's Gnosticism is this thing that like was never like codified. Like there's no Nicene Creed for Gnosticism or whatever, but it's like this idea that there were these breakaway sects, in particular of Christianity, very early on, who felt that basically there was a distinction made between the Old Testament and the New Testament, where like the God of the Old Testament, like Yahweh, is actually an evil like presence. Like it's like this, it's actually like a false God. So like,
okay,
who created the world and everything, like the Bible said, but it's,
Yahweh is pretty scary. I could see
he's pretty scary. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he creates the world, and it's like he's a false God because he creates this world that is separate from like the more transcendental supreme being, like the true kind of God.
Okay.
So the idea for Gnostics is that the world, the material world that we inhabit, is like already always fallen, right? So it's like corrupt because it was created by this like evil kind of God. So it's this dualistic kind of idea.
Okay.
Where like the real God is sort of like beyond, and in order to like save us, the real God has to send like emanations of itself into the material world, that being like people like Jesus, who like have to come in into the material world, the corrupt sort of world of the demiurge, as the evil God is called.
Okay.
And so that's why you get, so in the Gnostic view, the serpent in the Garden of Eden is like a Gnostic redeemer, because the serpent is like, take the knowledge, know what is good and evil, and then Christ is as well, because, and in both cases, the kind of transcendental God from beyond needs to be immanentized into like a something that can get past all the evil sort of overseers that like the demons that basically watch over the material world. And so that's why the serpent, lowly slithering snake, was one, and why Christ was as well, because he was just a lowly carpenter. Like, so it's this idea of like emanations of the transcendent get sort of sneak in undercover, like through camouflage.
Oh, fucking okay, Joe Chip, JC.
Oh,
I see now. Okay.
Yeah. So. Well, I never clocked that, but that's a good point actually.
Well,
but
okay, I was listening to a podcast about Ubik today, and they're kind of going over Gnosticism, and it just didn't hit. But something they said in my retard interpretation, if I could just reduce it to good and evil, that essentially evil is closer at home, it's in the material world. Goodness is more powerful but further away.
Yeah,
and has to send essentially a material. A Jesus
emissaries,
yeah.
So like
interface with us,
but they have to do so on the material world terms, kind of thing. So like, and so they have to sneak in under cover of the.
I mean, that fits the Twin Peaks parallel, where it has a much more articulate sense of evil. You got Bob, you got, is it Judy? It gives many more names to the sinister forces, and goodness is something that's more angelic and distant, and that you kind of have to have faith in. You know, that's why I love like Fire Walk with Me, that it's this torturous, horrific movie. And at the end, the final moment is like this an angel, you know, visiting Laura Palmer. And in the final moment, that kind of gives it this uplifting. It's like, yeah, but you know, there's greater light, or like True Detective, kind of the final note of like season 1 True Detective, where they have the light versus darkness monologue by Matthew McConaughey, where he's like the light was born out of darkness, or it was like, what the fuck he says, I'm getting kind of soft
whatever
now,
the fuck he says.
But it basically, like, there's a light and dark, and it began in dark, but the light is growing, and therefore the light is winning, kind of thing.
Yeah. So in Ubik, I think, like, because of the hold that Jory has over like his ability to like reshape the world and regress it and things like that in the what's it called, the Half-Life sort of simulation. I think you could read him as the demiurge, like the evil god or whatever. Runsita and his wife are kind of like messengers, or, you know, Gnostic redeemers or whatever, angels perhaps.
I thought it was really sweet that the wife turned out to be, you know, like the force of goodness, and you know, and Ubik itself being like the product itself being this you know, salvation or transcendence or whatever, the cure for the corruption and decrepitude and decay of the world that they're inhabiting. But or go on.
So that's the Gnostic reading of it, that I kind of get where they're coming from, but like the last chapter completely undermines the entire thing. So that's what I mean about like when you have any theory about this book, it's never going to perfectly fit.
The last chapter, the first reading, it aggravated me because I thought it was just kind of a final
gotcha
twist. Just to kind of make it seem more complex than it is. But yeah, the second read through it kind of it placed the idea of like life and death being relative to each other, and you know, if you're on one side, you're on this, you know, you perceive it as life, and there's something like optimistic, like when when you think about death, you think of like just cold nothingness in the terror of that. You know, it's almost optimistic to think that there's shape inform, or there's an experience beyond this. I thought about that watching Enter the Void when the main character dies, and you're in his head while he's like going through his death throes, and it's horrifying because it confronts you with the fact that you're going to die. But then the rest of the movie continues, and you're in going through, like, your experience. His consciousness is still like going on and going through something, which almost seems optimistic, almost like, as horrifying as that concept is, like, it's very optimistic to think that there is experience beyond what we're experiencing now. But yeah, I don't like that. He seems to have sincere faith that there is a parallel experience beyond the one we're in now. That it feel like, it's nice to think, even if it is like cold and horrifying, at least it's something, other than cold darkness. But yeah, the first time I read that, I was like, oh, okay, that's just a cool little fucking final twist. But I feel like that is the meaning, that there is, there's something working in tandem there between Glenn Runseter and Joe Chip.
Do you ever think about, like, when people think about death now, and like, because people kind of view their lives like a movie, and so this idea that like it ends and there's cold and darkness or whatever, is like, it's like very cinematic when you think about it, because it's like credits roll, end, and then there's nothing. But then sometimes I think about, like, I don't know, obviously I don't know because I haven't died, but but I think, is there just something that, just your consciousness replays or whatever, and then it's almost like, your body might die, but like it could continue on, like, because it's this. I don't know what I'm trying to explain here.
No, okay. Have you read much like Marshall McLuhan? Or are you into any of that? Yeah. I love him to death, but getting into him, I think about that a lot, because I think the idea of death is very much informed by like the predominant media of our time, and like, because it creates a metaphor for our understanding life. So, in the West, we have very defined beginnings and ends, with like the printing press broadcasting the book as a very finite, like, the book is a very finite thing that has a beginning, middle, and end. And that's it. That's kind of like what Don DeLillo was he keeps mentioning in White Noise, like, all plots lead deathward, or like they end in death, and it's a very Western thing. I think the West is very neurotic about death as a final end, by virtue of the fact that, like, Egyptians would mummify bodies as a way to preserve life after death. Like, the body, the physical body, had to be mummified, because it's almost, you had to see the remains, and they had to be preserved in perpetuity.
I totally vibe with that, by the way. I don't want to get cremated. Like, I want, like, to have like a physical body somewhere.
Yeah.
So, like, just in case in the future, if they want to resurrect me, they can do that. Like, I think that's easier to do if you've got like some bones or something.
Versus, like the non-Western, it's like you return to the flux and flow of, like, it's almost like you're going back home, and like, your life is this intermittent stage of consciousness or whatever, but it's not the end all be all. Which again gets back to like the paranoid postmodern moment of Dick and Pynchon in the 60s, and because a lot of people attribute this as just the sole byproduct of like LSD and drugs, and it's like, it's not that, it's electronic media totally reorienting in within like a decade, like all of Western life, that's something I think about quite a bit. And it feels even reductive to say that it all comes down to just media, but I do think there is something to that the metaphor of like life is a movie. Benjamin Franklin, for him, life was a book and every day is like a page, because that was the predominant media then was books and literature. And that's there's something to that, I think.
Yeah, and for ancient cultures, it might have been life was a song or a poem or something like that,
Yeah, and songs and poems are like repetitive, and that you sing them over and over, and they're not tangible and finite. Like you can see where they probably didn't have the visceral, tangible fear of death, that we do now.
Yeah, that's interesting actually, because like a song or a poem is something that's memorized. It's something that will never decay. Like it's not made of paper or like that will just blow away in the wind eventually. It's like something that can, be passed down again and again. It's like, yeah, that's a really cool point. I like that.
Yeah. That's yeah. I was really invested in like the postmodern thing, because that seems like more and more fundamentally what the West was grappling with, like I view like Metal Gear Solid 2, the video game, like the greatest, the pinnacle of like postmodern art. And of course it comes from Japan, in the East, because I feel like the East just intuitively gets it in a way.
Yeah. Well, Japan in particular, like it's funny how like Japan is a very postmodern culture, but like has absolutely no anxiety about it. Like, whereas in the West, like everything that's like considered postmodern or like, hyper real or whatever is just, there's this anxiety about it. But it's like, is it authentic or, like, is it real?
Right. Yeah.
Whereas Japan, it's just like, whatever. Like, it's
right.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like Night of the Living Dead came out, in 68, and so that, again, the whole idea of like the undead and that you don't ever die, like presented as a horror thing, but there's something also optimistic about that like, oh, I can still like roam about, after I die and fuck people up, live my
dream. It's
desire.
The dream.
Yeah. No, the zombie life is way better than you just go for it.
Right.
We wanted to give you a shave like no other you ever had. We said it's about time a man's face got a little loving. We said with Ubik's self-winding Swiss chromium never-ending blade, the days of scrape are over. So try Ubik and be loved. Warning, use only as directed and with caution. Perk up pouting household surfaces with new Miracle Ubik, the easy-to-apply, extra shiny, non-stick plastic coating. Entirely harmless if used as directed. Saves endless scrubbing, glides you right out of the kitchen. Has perspiration odor taken you out of the swim? 10-day Ubik deodorant spray or Ubik roll-on ends worry of offending brings you back where the happening is. Safe when used as directed in a conscientious program of body hygiene. Pop tasty Ubik into your toaster, made only from fresh fruit and healthful all-vegetable shortening. Ubik makes breakfast a feast. Put zing in your thing. Safe when handled as directed.
This is great, by the way. We have been going
so fun.
Almost 3 hours. This may, like, depending on how long we talk for this next bit, this may be the longest episode ever, which I'm loving.
Oh my God. I love this so much.
I love really long episodes of podcasts. I don't care whatever. Like whenever someone complains about that, I'm like, shut up. Like,
do you get complaints?
Sometimes, like the first time I did an episode, which was like an hour 40, and that's like not that long considering the podcast I listen to.
No. Yeah.
And so I got some like people being like, oh, an hour and 40. And I'm like, shut up. Like put it, if you're so time poor, play it on double speed or something. Like,
Yeah. I feel like the type of people to complain about that stuff in podcasts are they're listening to it all. Like I don't know. It's not like they're not listening to it beginning to end, and they're the most invested. And
or the kind of people who are like that are the people who sit down to listen to a podcast. Whereas like I'm the kind of person who is doing something while I'm listening to a podcast.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, I have an email job, so like, you know,
Same.
I go for walks and listen to podcasts. So
Yeah.
and I actually really like that a lot of, from what I can tell, a lot of my audience is like people who are manual laborers and stuff like that and just want something to listen to that's, you know, intellectually stimulating in some way while they're shoveling stuff or operating vehicles or whatever. And so I feel that kind of, they love it when it's really long because it's like, it's something to listen to while they're doing really monotonous work. Whereas I think the people who complain are people like us with female jobs who are like, I don't have time for this. I'm like, you have all the time in the world, cunt. Like,
they do. It's that seems like I don't know. The podcasting thing, which I don't host any, so I'm not on the side of that, but the quote unquote parasocial sort of, I listen to you and I pay for your Patreon, therefore I own you, so I have the right to complain. So I'm just going to complain to do it. You know, that seems.
Well, they don't even need to pay you to complain. So,
right, yeah.
And I'm like, and that's really funny because the first complaint I got about length, which was like when it was like, 1 hour 40, I was like, well, and then I did like a 2.5 hour episode straight after that.
Yeah,
it was almost perfect. It was almost like I planned it, but I didn't. But anyway,
this is a gift.
Yeah. Okay, so
every single one of these beers just explodes on me. I don't know what I did. I gotta get some paper towels.
Yeah, you sort yourself out.
Sorry, hold on. Oh man.
How many beers have you had?
Let's see. I'm counting. I had a huge glass of wine before this because I still I get nervous before these, so I have to like be half sauce going in. And
oh really?
I'm like to think I'm a composed drunk, so I trust myself, but it's getting better.
I feel like most of the podcasts you've been on are pretty casual though. Like it's not like you're going on NPR or anything. But maybe that'll happen one day, maybe.
Who knows? I mean, NPR they removed themselves from Twitter because they're rightfully designated as state funded. Yeah. Excuse me. Missoula has the distinction of being one of the drunkest cities in the U.S.
Oh, I have to come then.
Oh God, okay? Missoula, it is fun. Like per capita, they base it, I think, per capita based on like breweries or just bars per capita, whatever. But it does feel that way, and I think in a good way. It's a very Dionysian city,
Love it. I really appreciate all the states that are sort of up on the border with Canada. Like there's a real drinking, especially beer, because it's just like you drink to warm up sort of thing.
Yeah,
it's cold up there, That's what I really loved about Wisconsin. Like they love their beer there.
I think most American, like Bud Light and all that, and Budweiser comes from that area. Milwaukee, is that Wisconsin?
Yeah, that's Wisconsin. I went there actually.
I think because Milwaukee and Green Bay tend to beat out Missoula. But
per capita,
yeah. And like the traveling I've done in the States, which like I went to school in California.
Whereabouts?
Just south of San Francisco, right outside of San Jose.
Okay.
So Bay Area, which was fun, but
great place to go to school, I reckon.
It was fun. I mean, I followed a girl, talking about like being cucked by a girl. Like I followed a girl there. She went to Stanford. She was smarter than me. She's an idiot in every other way, but academically smart. And like we made it maybe a month into undergrad, and then we broke up. You know, Santa Clara was like right south of Stanford. But yeah, Bay Area is fun. I visited there once during lockdown, and it was a nightmare.
Oh
Like
yeah,
everything
terrible.
everything that like all the Fox News sort of, you know, right-wing types complain about was like it was true. Like it was horrifying. I don't know. Seattle was the same. I just went there. That place is disgusting right now.
Is it? I was thinking of going there this trip actually, but
it's fun. Like I mean that's where I met like Noah from the Ringo Tango dude. Yeah. He's cool. I have a lot of friends in Seattle. Seattle's like culturally just a bigger Missoula. Same with like Portland, Oregon, but as much like Montana is it has that sort of like interstates xenophobia of like don't come to our state and, you know, ruin our green pastures kind of attitude. I do think though that lockdown brought a lot of the fun people. Like there's been just music everywhere and just like dancing in the streets kind of stuff.
I love that. That's what I love about New Orleans. Like,
oh god,
have you ever been?
No.
Oh, you should go. It's amazing.
Sounds so great. Yeah,
you would love it as like an Arty sleaze person.
yeah. Dude. Yeah, I love the dance floor.
Do you? Interesting.
I do. I got best dancer of my senior class. Got voted that. Because I'm just I love dancing. I tear it up. Missoula's fun. I would say it's better than ever. With all of the new people here. So, because I think that like a lot of the people who like didn't like all of the draconian lockdown shit from like California and New York, which are the two main ones, they all moved here, and it brought all the cool people. So because like the whole like gender goblin problem was like worse in Missoula in 2019 in a very like genuinely oppressive way if you're trying to do anything artistically locally. But now we have all these like bimbo yuppies who just want to party and have fun. So there's a lot more energy here. You know,
that's a great context for the magazine too. Like if you want to, I know that you're probably like more international, right? Like, you know, I know about it in fucking buttfuck Australia. Like, yeah. So it's like, it depends like how you want to do it. But like, I always think that people with publications or whatever sort of need to do more local stuff. Like make the magazine or the book or the fucking thing that you want to sell like really like a cool designer item. Like have a night where there's heaps of fucking bands on and you like shill the fuck out of the publication and shit like that. No one does that anymore.
No. My hope, like I tried starting locally. Again, I've had this since 2017. Honestly, me just being a normal warm-blooded person who I can't not speak out against like the sort of like bureaucratic liberal madness. To me I'm coming from an apolitical stance, but like to them it's like if you praise beauty in a certain way, they think you're some sort of like Randian you know, whatever, like they'll come at you. But my strategy, not even like I was even like intellectualizing it this way, but like just I'm gonna find my people online, just put this thing out there and then grow and then just press in on my hometown and force them to accept me, you know, the inverse of like how it should work. But I truthfully, like the people I've tried to collaborate locally, it would take them all of like 5 minutes to start lecturing me about liking a Marilyn Manson or Kanye song. Like,
Are you serious? It's that bad.
It's that bad, yeah. And these are, yeah, oh god.
Both of those people are libs, but
they're libs. Yeah, they're libs.
Both Kanye and Marilyn Manson are libs.
And Trump, like he's the core of all this, but like Trump is a liberal. He's a 90s 2000s New York liberal.
Yeah, but even that's unacceptable now. So
it's insane. Unfortunately, those are the people who have all the sway, and none of them are like from here. They're from Portland or Seattle.
She doesn't even go here.
Exactly. Yeah. So I feel like the only way to make work is I just got to be bigger than them, and yeah, I don't know. I'm a normal, kind person, and so
yeah,
I'll force my way through.
You will be bigger than them, and also you're probably like, oh, not probably. I am confident in saying that you are more disciplined than them. So
that will, yeah. Thank you.
All right, let's get back to Ubik.
Yeah.
All right. In terms of the philosophy or anything or the ideas, do you have anything more to say? Because
I did on my piss break, and it totally lost. I lost it.
Because I'm going to go into really gay territory in a second, but
go there. Yeah, I lost it.
I want to talk about the fashion in this book.
Oh my god, I can't believe we even touched on that yet. That's one of the funniest things about this.
This book has the most in terms of like the descriptions of what people are wearing. This is why I think this in some ways, and I'll talk about this later when we talk about adaptation, but this is one of the ways in which I think this is unfilmable, because the outfits are fucking insane.
Yeah,
Like I'm going to read a few descriptions of them, okay? And so Tippy Jackson, for instance, the character you talked about that you were writing under an alias,
yeah,
all those years ago.
Uh-huh.
This is how their clothes are described. Ersatz vicuna trousers and a grey sweatshirt on which had been printed a now faded full-face portrait of Bertrand Lord Russell. What? And then there's the other one that I really liked was, I've got it written down here. Oh, Gigi Ashwood. His customary natty birch bark pantaloons, hemp rope belt, peekaboo see-through top, and train engineer's tall hat.
Peekaboo. Yeah, reading those.
Train engineer's hat. He's walking around with that.
That's where when I was reading that, I was like, no, Total Recall is a faithful adaptation of Dick. Verhoeven's the whole campy thing, because that all that shit's so funny.
And it's actually very gender bendy too. Like they're wearing stuff that, like, why is a man wearing this?
It's described in a way like in like RPG games where you just like you pick whatever outfit maximizes your stats and you look like some cyberpunk freak, Oh,
I always I don't care about stats. I just like care about looking ridiculous.
I mean that, yeah.
I also like in RPGs like Cyberpunk and Fallout, and to some extent like things like Skyrim and stuff like that. I like making my character really hideously but ugly. And then I get a sick sort of pleasure in like doing the romance plot lines and like these characters like falling in love with you. I don't know where that comes from. Like maybe it's a low self-esteem thing or something.
No, that's the whole point of those games. The outfits in this, it goes into like really descriptive detail in all of them. It reminds me of like American Psycho, the way it like takes the time to describe every single brand that everyone's wearing. But yeah, this is they're like fucking Hunger Games people from the Capitol, blue-haired,
Yeah. But it's also not just like the freaky telepathic people. It's also like here's a description of like someone who's just a standard office worker. His electric yellow cummerbund, petal skirt, knee-hugging hose, and military-style visored cap. That's just some schmo in a cubicle.
Yeah. When this, like, the future, this takes place in like the 90s, right?
92. Yeah.
That's like his future.
Yeah.
That's, yeah. Because that's supposed to be like the futuristic
and also
aesthetic.
To be quite honest, not far off from the 90s.
No. Yeah. That it seems he's kind of spot on.
Oh, I also liked the Herbert Schönheit von Vogelslag, or the guy, the Swiss doctor guy. A continental outfit, he says. Tweed toga, loafers, crimson sash, and a purple airplane propeller beanie.
Yeah. It would be great if they do adapt it and
just like straight, like just do the costumes as described. Don't make it ironic. They're just dressed like that.
What do you think? Like Dick was just taking the piss out of this, or like? I mean, it could serve as like the function of like, the regression of like going back in time when people dress normally and
yeah,
pardon from the future. But
he's having too much fun. He's having too much fun.
He's just fucking around.
Yeah.
I would love to know his thought process behind all of that. Because that's all. I mean, even the names too, like Francisca Spanish, And
is she Spanish? I feel like she is Hispanic. Like, I don't know.
It probably. I mean, she fits like the. I think that one was like she's depicted as this like depressed Penelope Cruz type, And
I think she's wearing at some point. I didn't note this down, but I think she is wearing like a serape or something like that.
She came across, just because her last name's Spanish, is erotic to me. Pat obviously being the femme fatale. This maybe just this straight mind at work, but even like when late in the book, when like Pat is presented as like the antagonist who's just fucking with them, is still in the back of my mind, like, well, I hope Joe Chip still like fucks her, like I hope this still works out.
Ooh, that's what I really liked about reading this as well, is the very forthright heterosexuality, because I haven't read like an older book like this for a while, like where he's like doing the male gaze on the female characters. I'm like, yes.
Oh God.
Yes, Queen.
Yeah, dude. Pat, like, yeah, she's very hot. I'm very happy for Joe Chip for marrying her retroactively, or however that works out.
Getting forced into marrying her by her powers, or
dude, the femme fatale, like that doesn't even really exist anymore in anything. That was something that stood out to me. I mean, yeah, the goofy attire, and like who's the is it Al Hammond? Like he's the black guy.
Yes,
they call him Negro.
Yeah.
You have the.
Oh yeah, I did note down what he was wearing: green felt knickers, grey golf socks, badger hide, open midriff blouse, and imitation patent leather pumps. This is like some fucking gay bag of ants or something.
That fits him. I mean, that was like when did Iceberg Slim Brett Pimp, like the whole like black dandy thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the outfits are so funny.
That's just another one. Actually, someone should just do a fashion line, like, because the making a film of this is incredibly hard from what I've seen of like attempts to adapt it. Like, someone should just do a fashion line about it. That's what you can do.
That would be incredible. Dude, yeah. Any sort of like this sort of trope of like having a crew in where you have a bunch of this co-ed crew of like men and women who are fashionably dressed. Like Mission Impossible, the first one does that, and it just hits you on the head that all the sexual tension happening there, you know. That I love that as a trope or whatever, you know. Men and women have to work together professionally, but there's just such underlying sexual tension, you know, by virtue of the fact that they're dressing fashionably, you know.
Well, fashionably or dressing like kabuki characters.
Like, yeah. What's funny is a lot of the podcasts I listen to, they're talking about like K. Dick and like Ubik being akin to like Kafka, like the writer, but I thought they're referencing like Kafka, the clown character from Final Fantasy VI, you know. Like, I thought they're making a point about like their fashion sensibility because they are. It's like very clownish, and
that's the thing that like people. It's not often remarked upon is like how funny he is too. Like obviously he's disturbing and unsettling and whatever, like we said earlier. But like some of this shit is really funny.
It is, yeah.
Have you heard of the abortion short story that he wrote?
No.
Oh, it was very controversial. He did shit. When Roe versus Wade passed, he did this kind of satirical Jonathan Swift like sort of story about like what was it called, the pre-persons or something like that, and it was like
pre-persons.
People are allowed to abort people until they're 12 because like no one is considered human until they can do like basic algebra.
Oh my god. No way.
Yeah. So he got in trouble with a lot of feminists for that. It's pretty funny.
The Pre-Persons is a science fiction short story by American writer Philip K. Dick. The story was an anti-abortion response to Roe v. Wade. That's so funny. Who's the Slaughterhouse-Five?
Kurt Vonnegut. Yeah.
He had a short story. The Great Space Fuck, is that it?
I haven't heard of that one. That sounds great.
That one is
title alone, I'm gonna read it.
I think that's what it's called. The Big Space Fuck, Kurt Vonnegut. I don't remember if that one's anti-abortion in that specific kind of sci-fi way. That one where it's like Earth is so trashed and demolished that people are going to the scientists are they're going to send a spaceship of sperm just out into space and just hope to impregnate you know another planet.
Very libidinal.
yeah that's so funny.
Yeah, so
it's hard to like. Okay, I mean, I haven't even read the Pre-Persons, but it's anti-abortion almost seems too strong. It seems just like in the same way like Enter the Void, Gaspar like got flack for being like anti-abortion, but I think it's more like pro-natalist or whatever. Because if you believe in the cycle of like life and death, then on some level you hold like life as like valuable.
Yeah.
And because they're in Enter the Void, there's the whole sequence when the sister's getting an abortion, and it's a very like cinematically traumatic moment, you know, that signals that this is not a positive experience, you know, you know, and like that, and that's enough to like trigger, you know, feminist sensibility.
That's why I always call that film Enter the Badge.
yeah. Well, even the like 2001 Space Odyssey being this like cycle of life thing that ends with a baby in this like cosmic way. That dude, the whole, oh god, it sucks that like the gender and transgender question that we're just locked into this discourse that's just so dumb. you know, and the questions of, like, it's so boring, dude. And the word abortion itself, like, it is what it is. But these are exactly the type of questions, whatever, that sci-fi people should be exploring, you know, if you're talking about this stuff, like, to get hit. I don't see PKD being a quote unquote anti-abortionist.
He just likes to fuck with people, like, and so that's
well,
like,
pre-persons is
probably
such
why he
a,
wrote
that's
it.
so funny. Pre-person, you know, which is kind of true.
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it, actually. But anyway, we don't need to get into that.
Yeah, we don't have to, but yeah, that's so funny.
Okay, so adaptations. So this book people have tried to adapt this book many times, and all of them have failed. It's one of those things that I think is never going to get adapted, and if it is, it's probably not going to be very good. But you know, we'll see. But every attempt has sort of been stuck in development hell for multiple years and is just sort of like petered out. I'm not sure why. Probably because my first instinct would be to say that the book is too. There's some great images that I think would be cinematically, I would love to see. Like I said, the fashion
would be incredible.
The humanoid bomb. That would be great. That would be
Verhoeven
great
could
to
probably
see.
do this. If
yes, yeah.
Like he probably could.
But
yeah,
but I think the appeal of the book is it's far too literary. It's far too like intellectual, like that. Doesn't immediately lend itself to cinema. Maybe.
I kind of wanted to check out that Ubik game.
Yes, have you watched the playthrough of it at least?
I have, and I kind of struggled to find a good download of it, and then I just gave up.
It's so janky. And
it's
just this weird sort of like mishmash of like squad type
that's so funny.
RPG games, and I'm like, the squad thing is like literally one chapter out of the whole book where there is a squad that is literally just mentioned. They don't do anything.
That's all.
They just go to the moon. They just go to the moon. That's it. Like, and that's the whole game.
Yeah. I feel like of all the, like, you can't adapt this to the film, I feel like you probably could. It would take, I don't know. If Lynch could do what he was doing, and if Verhoeven could do Total Recall.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like
Lynch would be great, although an obvious choice, but great.
Yeah. I mean, everyone said that about White Noise, and then Baumbach did it for Netflix, and it was awful. If you've seen that,
I've heard of this. I've been told by many close friends how like bad it is. But
White Noise is similarly unfilmable due to the same like sort of literary postmodern, you know, it's postmodern literary quality. And Baumbach totally shit the bed on it. So I don't know. I tend to think that you could do it, and I feel like I'd love to see it be done because of the fashion quirks and just to like fuck with people, you know, this with that setup.
Yeah.
And the direction it goes.
Phil K. Dick actually did write a screenplay and to adapt, but no one has since adapted it. You can get a copy of it. Like, I think it's published in book form. And it's really funny because in the kind of preface to it, an author who was a friend of Dick's called Tim Powers talks about how beyond the script, he had this idea for the way it could be visualized, which would be that this film itself could undergo like regressions or reversions like in the book. So like
sick. Yeah.
It could start out like a normal movie, then like rewind and kind of go black and white, then kind of go back to that awkward sort of the frame rate of like early films. You know how they were sort of jerky and flat and stuff.
Yeah.
And then kind of just eventually just kind of decay to nothing. I think
That'd be
that's a really cool idea, but like you'd have to get the right director or filmmaker to sort of realize that in a way
It's
that
one of
wasn't.
those it's one of those things, if it were to be properly adapted, I think people like us would like it, and then the public would. Like, I mean, like Blonde, Netflix
Oh yeah,
Blonde,
get
like,
Andrew Dominic to do it.
Andrew Dominic, yeah, because like Blonde did that where they fucked around like ratio aspect and all that, and
People
yeah,
are like, what's going on?
oh god, the discourse around Blonde, which like no one is even like really talking about too much, but it still like frustrates me to no end because it's such a, to me, obvious, beautiful masterpiece and whatever. But I feel like that sort of treatment, yeah, if you're gonna simulate the regression through the film itself, I mean that'd be sick.
And then what'd be really funny is like, this would kind of be impossible to do, but like you could then like stop the film ends, and then like you end the film with a theater show. Like regress it so far. That'd be really funny.
Oh god, dude. Yeah, they could get real meta with this, and
Yeah. But he'd be into that, I think. But it'd be interesting to see if it ever gets adapted. I think Michel Gondry tried to adapt it as well.
Michel Gondry.
Yeah, the French filmmaker. He did Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's akin to Ubik.
Yeah, that sort of but I think he sort of said, "Oh, look, it works as a book. It's very hard to film it." I think also because he got a bad script, like a bad adaptation.
Okay.
So
I feel like of all the unfilmable books, Ubik could be done. I mean, God, people say that. I mean, they say that like Blood Meridian because of its violence, and it's like by today's standards, it's not really that violent anymore.
Not that violent at all.
Yeah. Who? James Franco did like a student project, I think, on Blood Meridian.
Did he?
I think so. I used to love him, but I don't have any faith in him at all. Yeah, Ubik could be done. I don't know, maybe the PS1 1998 game did it, and I'm just missing out. But
from what I've seen, I doubt it did.
That point and click adventure.
It looks like a point and click, crappy sort of like Time Commando meets fucking Deus Ex. Like I don't know what the fuck's going on with that game, but anyway.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It actually, now that I think about it, if it was adapted like to a video game in a better way, it'd be really interesting too. Like,
it seems like it'd be fit.
You could
for a
fuck
game.
With people way more in a game. With
Ubik,
I think.
Yeah. Well, because like we were saying earlier, like in Electric Sheep, when he I mean, this is an adaptation of that, whatever, but like the empathy box, whatever, that they tune into in Electric Sheep, like he basically describes like Death Stranding.
Yeah.
When I was playing Death Stranding, I'm like, dude, this is the game they're playing in it's very PKD, you know, like the whole message or whatever he's dealing with there. I don't know. I think the whole it can't be adapted is like that just should be any sort of like filmmaker with ambition, or anyone should like that should be what they jump on, you know. It's doable for sure.
Yeah, that goes back to what we were saying at the start, you know, like that you should rise to the challenge of something, right? Do something you don't know how to do.
There was like early 2000s, there was a big like PK Dick, you know, there's a lot of interest in him, and I guess there's a Prime show, whatever that we're talking about, but it'd be cool if like people jump back on this train.
Yeah, that's how I found out about this book. Like I jumped on that train. Like I saw Scanner Darkly and things like that.
Yeah,
and
I haven't seen that. Is the movie good?
I actually really like it. Like,
yeah,
it is. obviously visually interesting, but it's pretty faithful to the vibe of it. Yeah, I would. Have you read it?
I haven't read or seen the movie.
Yeah.
Are you kind of Keanu Reeves fan?
I like him. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. He's kind of fallen into like the 2010s Bill Murray category of like
a little bit, hasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. I've always liked him. It's unfortunate that he has, but
I did love him. Did you play Cyberpunk?
Yeah.
I did love him in that.
He's sick in that. Yeah.
but I loved him in that because it was Keanu Reeves clearly, but also like, oh, he's trying to do a character. It's like, oh, that's cute.
I'm in your head. Yeah.
So yeah, that was fun. Yeah. Do we have any other thoughts on PKD or Ubik?
God.
So many.
Probably, but that was fun. That was cool.
Yeah, this has been so good.
Again, I'm happy I'm the Ubik guy.
Happy Ubik guy. And I think technically, actually, maybe not. I was going to say you might be the first straight guy guest.
Oh, shit.
I'm pretty sure you might be, yeah.
No way.
And the Ubik guy.
And the Ubik guy.
Milestones, Ryan. Milestones.
That's huge. I'm happy about that.
The first magazine editor too. There you go.
That's a big one. Yeah. Yeah. Issue 2 out. Issue 2 will be out soon.
Yeah. Buy it.
Buy it. Yeah. No, this is awesome. It's funny. Messaging each other and stuff, and then actually doing this and meeting. It's fun for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
I'm honored to be on the show.
Honored to have you. Thank you so much for your insights into Ubik, what you think about it, and also like telling us about the wild world of Arty sleazy magazines.
Yeah.
If PKD was still alive, maybe you could publish a sort of story of his or something. That'd be cool.
I think his point is that he is still alive. He's just on the other side.
He is on the other side. Yeah. Maybe we'll see his face on some coins or something.
We're the ones who are dead.
That's true.
That's the point.
Yeah. We're the living dead or the dying living.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
I am Ubik. Before the universe was, I am. I made the suns. I made the worlds. I created the lives and the places they inhabit. I moved them here. I put them there. They go as I say. They do as I tell them. I am the Word, and my name is never spoken, the name which no one knows. I am called Ubik, but that is not my name. I am. I shall always be.
have.